Welcome back to the LEC. Rogue is off to a great start in this Super Week as they grab their second win here against Misfit, and I have Comp with me to talk about the game. Thank you very much for joining me, Comp.
Hello, Laure. Glad to be here again.
Glad to have you again in the LEC. I want to talk about the early game and your role because we saw a lot of bot lane focused action. So is it your will to become a bot lane focused team?
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like the meta also makes it to be a bot lane meta. But yeah, especially after like our scrims and stuff and our practice, we came to realization that it's really good to draft around bot and like having this prio around Jinx, as we saw those 2 days that we either first pick it or we pick it on the first 3.
And you mentioned the meta and the fact that it's good to play around bot lane. I also want to touch on the changes that Riot made to teleports and ask your opinion on how it impacted the way you can play around bot lane in the first minutes.
Yeah, it's actually way more fun now to lane because I remember like in the past, especially Fnatic was doing that. They were always putting a ward on the like behind the bush, and they were just perma-tipping when you were pushing the waves. So it gives you way more freedom right now to play the lane and basically just push and play aggressive.
Well, for now, it feels good to be an ADC in 2022. That's really nice to hear. I want to touch on the fact that you've been playing with Trimby. He was one of the rookies in the LEC last year. How has it been working with him?
Well, I mean, when we started playing together during December, we did some scrims. I mean, we didn't really like play together like before that, right? So our synergy was not really on point. And also, like, fun fact, I was playing with 80 ping back then, so I kind of blame that too. It mustn't have been fun for him to play with an AD carry that has 80 ping. But right now, I think we came to a point where we realized how the meta is, what we should play, what we should not, and I think we just fit very nice together.
Yeah, synergy operating really well. Last question for you, Comp. We haven't seen you in the LEC for a year now, so I want to touch on the challenges you faced to come back at the best level this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, 2021 wasn't like the best year for me, I guess, in terms of competitive. I didn't get to play a lot. But I think overall, this offseason helped me a lot to just realize some stuff, actually experience and live things that an average LEC player and an average like competitive player that spends most of his time like playing the game and improving cannot really do because of time. So yeah, I'm overall pretty glad about how this offseason turned out to be for me, and I'm glad to be back.
And we're glad to have you back in the LEC, Comp. Thank you so much for the interview and good luck on the next game tomorrow.
Thank you too.
And
see you.
Trevor, back to you for more on this game.
Thank you so much. Congratulations to Rogue after a pretty convincing win once they got outside of the laning phase. This is the first post-game of 2022. And I have to start with the team comps. When we take a look at the draft, the first thing that's called out to me, Enchanter supports. We just talked about it in Ready Check. We talked about it yesterday. We're seeing it everywhere else in the world. Trouble, what did you think about the two Enchanters and what did you not like about Yuumi?
You're going to put me on the spot, aren't you? All right, so I really love that we've seen Enchanters because that means that a lot of the trust goes on to the ADCs to carry. And as we witnessed as well, Comp was in the front line. He was getting the shields, he was getting the speed ups, he was in the front line, he was playing, you know, he was the front line. Full stop. What I didn't like about the Yuumi is that usually the Yuumi is picked with some sort of hyper carry. It doesn't necessarily have to be your marksman. It could be something like Guldborg mentioned before. There's a type of Tryndamere, Yone, a Yasuo, something that can dish out consistent damage. I felt like what was missing on the Misfit side was consistent damage. I really love the idea with Vitiyo jumping in with the LeBlanc, trying to sort of get a very good angle on the Yuumi ult, but if you overstayed for the Yuumi ult to root someone, Vitiyo was instantly dead, and so was the Yuumi.
And that's the thing. You lack a clear identity here of what you want to do. Because when you usually pick the Jhin, what you think of this AD carry is that, oh, it's a facilitating AD carry. What that means is, okay, at least I have solo laners I can play for that can deal out the consistent damage that you were talking about, Trouble. But problem here was that when you take this draft that Misfits had in conjunction to the draft that Rogue has on their side, all your damage is coming in burst and you're making it very difficult for you to find this perfect team fight because that's the scenario you're looking for if you want to win. The Gnar needs to come in on the back line, find multiple members that LeBlanc then can AoE AoE one-shot, but the problem is you're against Yuumi, you're against a beefy frontline Renekton with Gargoyle still playing on the other hand, and it just becomes super difficult for you to pilot this team composition you have on Misfits against the team composition you have on Rogue. So I understand the decision Misfits were going for in terms of, all right, this champion against this in lane, all right, seems good, but the problem becomes when you finally look at the bigger picture, you get to the mid game, it just becomes so difficult to play.
I'm such a fan of Lulu into the damage dealers of LeBlanc and Jhin. It just makes sense. So the Rogue draft felt to me like a 2022 meta comp. A little too early to be branding it that, but it felt that way. I want to bring us to the first replay when we take a look at the Rogue bottom lane, because these are two players that were involved very early in the action and frankly led the charge for Rogue.
Completely agree, and yes, it feels very 2022. Enchanters with an AD carry you can play for, Comp was saying in the interview, so far the meta feels a bit more bot lane dominated, and I think you can definitely see that in this game as well, because when the ball finally starts to get rolling, when you get the wave priority and you get to have your jungler around here with no response from the enemy team, as we can see on the replay, not only does the game become incredibly difficult for you to play, it's also a lot of pressure before the other lanes, because this TP that they have in their lane no longer can be used down towards bottom. TPing back to lane is not going to matter too much, because you're going to be TPing back to another bot lane that has rotated up towards the top side.
Now, you guys are saying this is a very 2022 composition, and I 100% agree. But if I dare say, this is very comparable to a 2021 Rogue when they were fighting success through their bot lane, getting that pressure going in the bot side of the map, taking the bot side tower, then taking that successful bot lane, putting the pressure on the top side of the map, then breaking open mid and completely having the entire map to themselves. I love to see that they still have the same strengths in the team.
I mean, it's very early in the season, and can they do this again and again? That will be the question. The early game was a bit of a bloodbath, both junglers getting very heavily involved, and up until 15 minutes, gold and kills were even. But frankly, after seeing one dragon fight, the one we'll put on your screen right now, I started to believe that Rogue were going to win it. If you look at the mini-map, the setup here from Rogue was great.
Yeah, I love that you bring this setup up, because Rogue is getting priority of the bottom lane first, which means that they now have full control of walking down from bot, knowing that it's not vision. But more pivotally, it puts Hirit in a position where he has to engage from the front. And it's so initial for Misfits comp. They get to come from behind where they can find multiple members. Because they don't do that, Hirit's ultimate is flashed away, and we come to a point where this burst damage that Trouble mentioned earlier no longer is enough for a team to succeed. And once we come to the consistent part of a team fight, you can see comp with the backline is huge. Odo had great positioning as well.
I mean, at the end of the day, Misfits were scrambling throughout the course of that fight. Key ultimates did not land. That would have been their third dragon. It was stolen away by Rogue. And as the game continued to play out, Rogue were able to pick up the Baron and push the lead ahead. I will quickly announce right now that Odo Wamne actually won your Kia Pog. Well, no, we'll get to that in a second, because the last-ditch desperate play here from Misfits, they were down a significant amount of gold. They'd lost complete control of the map. This was all Rogue could do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we see the same story, right? The Yuumi onto the LeBlanc Vito, trying to find that flank from behind to keep key players locked down, but it's just not enough. I think Odo Amne on that Renekton, the weak side king with the solo bolo earlier into the game. I think his Renekton was monstrous in this game, and he was able to create so much room around his AD carry, so comp can move around and carry his own way.
And not only is that a statement for Odo Amne, it's also a statement in terms of the context we're looking at. You're playing against Hirit, who was just the best player for Misfits in their last game, but you're also playing against Hirit in a favorable matchup for Hirit, because you're playing Renekton into Gnard. This is super difficult to play in the laning phase, but all of a sudden, Odo is able to turn it around. And your bot lane on Misfits is failing. Your solo laners that are supposed to be favorable are no longer favorable. That's where the cookie just starts to crumble, and there's nothing you can do about it.
As a Rogue fan, it must feel very good to see what Comp and Trimby are doing in that bottom lane, how they ended up leading the way on many of those fights, but also pretty good to see how Rogue are operating within the course of those team fights, not forgetting some of the basics. It felt a lot like Misfits were scrambling. I personally don't think I like Hirit on Gnar. I think more games I have had question marks as opposed to celebrations, but it does mean that Misfits lose their first game of 2022, continuing the streak of regular season losses, 0-5 against Rogue now. Turn our attention to the next game. Team BDS and Excel Esports started the year with a loss, but tonight, one of them will bounce back with their first win, and that's a fact, Vedi.
That it is. Thank you very much, Quickshot. It's not the most enthusiastic way to build up these teams. Like Team BDS, second game ever in the LEC. Maybe you'll win today because, you know, one of you has to win.
Okay.
One of these two teams has to win.
In my opinion, we saw some very good stuff from the junglers in particular from both these teams. Yesterday, Markoon continued his very typical hyper-aggressive style, and Cinkrof, I think, was moving around the map in a very intelligent way. So I'm excited to see them match off against each other, because one of them will, in fact, get a win.
Let's get on into draft for game 2 then. And as you said, both teams actually had relatively good performances yesterday. Both the junglers played well. Cinkrof had a 2-level lead over Razork in their game for quite a lot of that matchup. Adam had a strong performance in the top lane as well. And Excel, overall, actually really pushed G2 into some of the later game team fights. So let's see what they can do today. Renekton and Diana banned away from BDS. Banned away by Excel from BDS, and Team BDS will ban away the Twisted Fate and the Lee Sin from Excel.
So nothing too crazy so far. We've been seeing a lot more of the Caitlyn being left open today. It seems that even though, from talking to many teams, it was considered a pretty high priority in scrims, or as I say that now, removed on the board for BDS, and that means the immediate Jinx answer is going to be locked in for Patrik. So yesterday, they locked in the Lucian Nami. Today, they're going to be going for a little bit more scaling this time around. And as you rightly said, it went quite late into the game yesterday for XL. It came ultimately down to a Elder Dragon fight, which, you know, could have gone either way depending on who secured that smite. But the Zhao going to be the immediate answer, a very common trend that we're now seeing. If, with the Lee Sin banned, the Jhin is up, the Jhin is then immediately locked in. So Cinkrof going to be something on a little more aggressive than the Viego this time around, and that's going to be paired up with the Jhin. This just seems to be like...
It's red first two picks.
Draft, yeah.
That's what happens. And then you pick Lulu, Jarvan or something if you're Excel here. Give yourself an Enchanter, give yourself a strong jungler, and might actually instead go for the Corki. Expectations are that will go to Nukeduck in the mid lane, but of course Broken Blade actually played it top against XL yesterday.
Yes. But Nukeduck has been playing since Season 3, I think, was his debut on Lemon Dogs. And Corki is one of the champions I always think about when it comes to Nukeduck. It obviously very strong scaling pick, relatively safe during the laning phase. What I will say though is with no jungler locked in, that does mean that Jarvan is likely going to be banned away. Things like the, Jarvan and Viego would probably be the two strongest junglers that are an option. And with those removed, you're then limited to what Markoon can actually bring out, because all of the main meta junglers will be taken off the board anyway, assuming that those are, of course, banned, and NUCLEARINT deciding to go for the Syndra. So very powerful mid-jungle 2v2, very common pairing that we'll often see alongside the Zhao. Very similar to the LeBlanc that we saw from last game, where you have strong setup thanks to the Syndra, and then you have that additional damage coming out from the Jhin as well.
And BDS actually deciding that Gangplank was a higher priority ban for them than the Jarvan, at least in this first set of bans. And because of that, I wonder if we'll see, you know, either the Jarvan or the Viego will get through, which means XL do have one of those sort of higher tier junglers to pick from. Set taken away by XL. There's Gwen as well. Actually looks like instead of looking towards the jungle, BDS have decided to focus on the mid lane and give Markoon the Jarvan that he piloted yesterday.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him lock it in. I mean, it offers strong frontline. It also offers an engage, which I think is really important with the composition that they currently have, unless XL was thinking about going for an Ornn top lane, which they could, of course, still do. But to me, it does suggest that BDS will try to give the counter pick over towards Adam, given that they've already locked in their mid laner. They can now just lock in their support. They know what they're playing against with no Thresh available. Limit could go for the Yuumi if you wanted to, so that's what we saw.
It would be a struggle considering it's banned. I was thinking maybe a Nautilus.
Oh yeah, it is just banned. Yeah, missed that one. So what else could he go for? Nautilus would probably be the primary candidate, as you rightly said. But they're going to go for a different Enchanter. Okay, so they're just going to match with a different type of Yuumi. Soraka does have similar poke, I would say, to Yuumi in terms of the laning phase, but that poke for Soraka in particular is important because it offers that health regeneration, which then sets her up to provide all of those heals. And she does offer a lot of healing as you get later on into the game. And And that silence could be very detrimental, but we'll have to wait and see. As the Ornn is now locked in for Finn, there's that engage tool, which now gives Markoon a lot of freedom, really, to do what he wants in the jungle. He could go for the Viego if he wants to, playing for those potential resets, or he could just go for a little bit more engage. Champions like Syndra, without their flash, really struggle. Jhin as well, when playing into a Jarvan Ornn. It's a scary engage, for sure. Something that you definitely don't want to be on the other end of. And when you have this long-range damage from the Corki and the Jinx as well, it's going to be tough to deal with.
And that's currently my woe for BDS. They're, apart from the Syndra, EQ combo, they're not the longest range of teams. And into Corki rockets, especially with the new Corki build that we've been seeing, it can be very difficult to actually get onto this XL backline without taking a huge amount of poke. They have engaged as well with the Ornn and the Jarvan, and that is an Irelia locked in for Adam in the top lane.
I am not a fan. Personally, I think one of the most important things for Irelia is being able to get on top of your target, right? So the first thing is Lulu, well, when you dive in, her polymorph is extremely obnoxious. And if Irelia gets hit by the polymorph, well, then that's going to ruin everything for you. On top of that, she's very skill shot reliant. Lulu, if she doesn't polymorph you, she can also whimsy the Jinx, helping with the bonus movement speed, making it easier to dodge those skill shots. On top of that, you have the Corki. And also, you'd have to find a way to get through the Jarvan and the Ornn front line. I think that, like, sure, in lane, I can definitely see how Irelia could do well. Early on, she may struggle a little bit, but I'm not sold on this Irelia pick. I don't think that you have the amount of crowd control that you really need to set her up for success. But Adam's feeling confident. He showcased a very strong laning phase yesterday. Chatham is what you called him, and I think that you have to be pretty confident to pick this champ into this composition. So we'll see how he's able to make it work, and maybe he can make me eat my words.
Is it going to be Chatham or Badham in the top lane for BDS? We'll see as they take on XL. One of these teams will get their first win of the split. No one says it better than the announcer. Welcome to Summoner's Rift as we jump into our second game of day 2 here. Of course, it is a super week in the LEC. We'll be back again tomorrow with even more action. We have 4 more games as well to go today, including Fnatic Vitality at the end of the day. But before we get there, let's get through this one. As I don't know if you've seen this Corki build that basically the Rockets do all of the damage in the world.
I've never played it, but I am aware of it. It's the Luden's one, right?
Yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah.
I've had, so I play Rakan predominantly. I'm not a one-trick, but I only play Rakan, obviously.
Right.
And I've had a big one take half my health at like level 13. It is not an enjoyable experience as a squishy support. And I say that because you know what BDS have? A very squishy support who needs to get relatively close to land her Q, her start full to get the healing buff.
So I don't know if you, years ago, I talked about this I thought about this weird triangle thing. Yeah. And it's not actually like, it's kind of associated with League of Legends, but I don't think it actually started in League of Legends.
But healing, engage.
Yeah, poke, healing, engage, which is that engage is really good into poke. Poke is typically quite good into healing. And then healing is quite good into engage. But I don't know if that really holds true anymore.
Yeah.
Because I think it's so circumstantial and there's so many different champions and how healing works and all this other stuff. So thinking more about it, it's a really useless point. And the point that I really want to get at is that because Soraka has to expend her life in order to heal, yes, a lot of the poke that comes out can be mitigated. So in that sense, sure, you can see how the healing can mitigate a lot of what the poke does. But she has to sacrifice her own health in order to do it, which means that if she's not able to land any of the Qs herself, that could be pretty bad. As Irelia, is Adam going to get solo killed?
He has to flash. Finn held the flash himself, but Adam on the receiving end of Ornn.
This is what I was talking about, that like Irelia at level 1 into Ornn, really not that strong. And Finn punishes him rightly. So now Adam has lost his flash. He will be forced to TP back to lane, which isn't really the worst thing in the world, but it's a huge advantage for Finn. He can just push this in. He can go for a cheetah recall if he wants to. Doesn't have to, of course. But he has the time and the freedom to do that with this wave under the attack, and he's going to do exactly that. So he's going to head back to base. He's going to reset some of his, well, all of his mana. He's going to spend a little bit of the money that he's been able to collect.
He doesn't need to if he didn't want to, because well, he'll buy the things that he couldn't buy out on the map.
Right. That's what I was saying. Like, that's why I was saying he didn't have to reset if he really didn't want to. But he's just going to use the time, get a little bit more health in his back pocket. But yeah, anyway, I think that overall, this Irelia is going to be really difficult to play in the late game. I think that XL definitely have the strongest scaling comp. They have really solid engage. They have a really solid team fight comp. I think a lot of BDS is reliant on having a strong mid jungle, similar to what we saw last game. You want to try and enable Cinkrof and NUCLEARINT. XL did just get vision of Cinkrof moving into their half of the jungle. Markoon is there and ready for it. But with Advienne moving, he feels that something is off. He's got to recognize that he's been spotted, so he's just going to disengage from that plate and is going to walk away. Very smart there from Cinkrof. And it was specifically because of that Advienne movement. He was like, this is weird. I feel like that they weren't playing. They're not playing in a way that suggests that they don't know that I'm here, which means that they probably know that I'm here. Yep. So I'm just going to back off and instead play it safe.
It's would have been tricky for BDS to find a fight down towards that bottom side. Now, Vedi, we do have a bit of trivia if you want. Evan
I love trivia.
has hit me with this. Okay, so who was the last player in the LEC to play Soraka?
Soraka?
I can give you a hint if you want a hint.
I think it was Alfari.
I'm going to give you a hint because you need a hint.
Oh.
Player no longer plays in the LEC.
Oh.
But you like...
It's a top laner, isn't it?
I'm not going to say what lane they play.
Then I don't know. I thought it was Alfari. That's the last one that I remember.
It's not a top laner.
Well, then I don't remember.
It's not a mid laner.
You'll have to tell me.
It's not a support.
Well, yeah.
There we go.
That doesn't help me.
It's not a jungler.
Was it Reckless?
It was Reckless! 2020 summer. Last guy to
that was the last guy?
to bring out Soraka, yeah.
Wow, I thought Alfari was earlier than that. Oh well. In
yeah,
any
but it
case,
was the last. If he was earlier, then it would have been.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, I remember when Soraka was in fact in the meta. Now, you'll notice that there's a stacking wave in top lane. That means that Advienne has made his way up. He doesn't care about being spotted. Their whole goal here is to deny Adam as much farm as possible.
I mean, Adam doesn't have flash either. Like, if he gets hit with a single brittle, this is a very easy knockup. There's the... Just look for the polymorph. What can he do? You can't do anything against that. The power of the polymorph. It tasted purple for XL as they get their first kill on the board.
And I think that XL is punishing this Irelia pick beautifully. Markoon already showcased that he's more than happy to play around top lane. You don't typically want to play around an Ornn lane, but when you have that stacked wave, when you know Adam doesn't have flash, it makes a lot of sense to do it. NUCLEARINT will pick up all that farm in the top lane after TPing. Which means that the farm won't at least go to waste, and Cinkrof doing what he can to try and hold the wave so that when Adam comes back, he has something to pick up. But Finn, can we quickly click on Finn, observers? I want to have a quick look at his experience right now.
Almost
yeah,
level
he's just
6.
about to hit level 6. That's what I thought, which is, I mean, of course, NUCLEARINT is also level 6 alongside Nukeduck, but the fact that he's basically a full level up over Adam just goes to show like how difficult this matchup can be in terms of the 1v1, but also when you shut this Irelia down, how weak she can be. You can see how feeble she is right now with only a longsword and the boots. Meanwhile, going up against the
Bramble Vest?
Bramble Vest. Yeah, I was about to say Thornmail. I'm like, it's not that one. It's Bramble Vest.
And the thing about that is, like, Irelia sometimes can get put behind in the early game, but can, you know, take over in a side lane later on or be a team fight threat. But you mentioned it in draft. It's going to be very difficult for Adam to ever actually get onto the back line of this XL team. It's going to be very difficult for him to find a good flank and find that Vanguard's edge he's looking for.
Even on a side lane, I think Corki is one of the safest you can get. If you just go for the more, I'm going to say conventional Corki build, where you just build the shield bow. And you
traditional.
Go more of the, you can go for more of the crits. I actually think Corki can hold his own in the Irelia matchup. Obviously, there are ways in which Irelia can win, but you're kind of relying on being on even footing in those situations. And the thing about Corki is because he has so much mobility, it can be difficult for the Irelia to lock him down. So even later on, I wouldn't say that Adam is super favored in the side lane, even if you might have some options. So being put behind in this early game, definitely not a great start for BDS. Obviously not going to count them out completely. They do still have this strong mid-jungle duo, which can allow them to set up for some plays. We haven't been able to find any early game action from them just yet. And notice as well, Nukeduck going for very early magic resistance with the Hex Drinker to mitigate some of that potential burst that can come out from the Syndra at level 6.
Just trying to squash any possibility that he could just get outskilled in that lane with the unleashed power. Patrik and Advienne moving up towards the top side of the map here. Yesterday it was BDS that we saw doing quite a lot of lane swaps. Adam moving down to bot lane around the 10-minute mark, but this is a more traditional one we have seen before, Vedius. 8 minutes on the clock means Rift Herald is spawning. xMatty stopped by Finn, not allowed to back.
4 tower shots just to stop xMatty's back. But I mean, so the reason why that's a pretty big deal is because, look, the Herald is now up. The bot lane has been rotated up to try and contest this objective. Cinkrof will be the first in the river and will secure the Scuttle Crab. And Corki's going to go back to base. No TP, though, which is why NUCLEARINT was able to work with his jungle and support to be able to maintain this control. But the fact that xMatty hasn't had that opportunity to reset could mean that XL have the numbers advantage needed in order to contest for this objective. They haven't started it up quite yet, waiting for Nukeduck to get back out onto the map. And I believe he should have his package. Yep, there it is. So XL, very scary to fight right now if you're BDS.
It looks like it's Manamune. It's safe for Nukeduck here on the Corki. Expect that might, can build into the non-conventional, the new age, the 2022 build that we've seen from Corki's, or in solo queue, we've all seen a few times. XL will start up that Rift Herald, and as you say, because xMatty was down towards the bottom side, it should be an easy enough secure for them, even though they gave up the Scuttle Crab. And with Rift Herald and 9 minutes on the clock, XL have about 1,000 gold lead. A lot of it coming through, of course, getting the kill onto Adam earlier on, but also, a slight CS lead in the jungle and a small one down towards the bottom side of the map as well.
Drake is, of course, still up. Both bot laners just continuing their trading. Markoon hovering around the top side of the map. Nothing too crazy happening so far. Looking for a window with which they can use that Herald. I wouldn't be surprised if they want to try and funnel that money into Patrik, but they may also just use it to break open the mid-tier 1. They kind of have a lot of options. What you don't want to do is funnel more gold to Finn.
I was thinking of it to Ornn. He's such a tank. Get him Sunfire, get him Thornmail, get him Frozen Fist.
And then he becomes the DPS.
Yeah.
And then he can also be
the Mage, Death Knight, Paladin, Hunter, Rogue, Warrior, Enchanter, Tank, Bruiser, Wizard, Warlock, Priest, Assassin, Gunslinger, Druid, Shaman, Necromancer, Ninja, Bard, Monk, Robot, Conjurer, Black, Majestic, Warding, God, Illusionist, Templar, Wizard.
That's Ornn.
It's the one. I did look that up.
Yeah.
By the way, it's pretty sure that's the LS one from all those years ago.
Not said that, I'd be like, interesting. Someone spends a little too much time on WoW. That's okay. Now, the Drake is going to be started up by BDS. Ornn does not have teleport. BDS know this. And so I would be surprised if XL chose to contest. Markoon, if you wanted to be ambitious, could EQ, steal, flash out. But I don't think he's going to. I think they're just going to concede that one. Only the first Drake of the game. Finn's going to be happy to receive some plates. And now the TP is going to come through. That ult?
Yeah, that ult.
Not sure what he was trying to do there. Maybe he's trying to interrupt some backs.
Maybe. Yeah, because maybe if you're going to use Rift Herald down towards the bottom side, you wanted to make sure Cinkrof couldn't back and then come back across here. Markoon is down towards that bottom lane. NUCLEARINT will catch out Nukeduck here. Hex Drink is still available for him, and the Magic Shield will be enough to make sure Nukeduck was never really in any danger.
We didn't comment on it, but xMatty and Limit also going for the barrier heal combo. Very common on Soraka lanes for her to run the heal as well. Because, well, it's good. Healing on healing on healing on healing.
Pretty good.
Yeah. So, allows Matty as well to run that extra defensive rune as opposed to the exhaust. And I think that when you're playing into this comp as well, running exhaust doesn't really offer you a lot. Exhausting the Jarvan won't really matter, and exhausting the Ornn won't do much of a difference either. So, and you don't expect really to be in range to exhaust either the Jinx or the Corki. So, just running barrier, having that extra defensive summon spell choice makes a lot of sense. So.
For the moment, XL just continuing to find these small advantages on the map. You can see 1,300 gold ahead. Advienne and Markoon now moving up towards the top side. Of course, this top lane tower, only 2 plates left on it. Only 2 minutes before those plates fall off, but expectations are with Markoon only having about a quarter of the timer left on this Rift Herald to place it, that they will wait to push out this singular wave. Patrik already on his way to cull the minions, and then Markoon will put down the Rift Herald and they'll make sure to get at least a couple of plates out of it.
Definitely the case, but overall a pretty slow early game, which is very much what XL have been looking for.
Yep.
We talked about how they do have the better scaling comp. We wanted to see a little bit more aggression in the mid jungle, but we haven't seen it. Last game, Misfits, they were able to get off 2 successful ganks onto Larson, which allowed them to really dominate through that mid-jungle and get themselves an early lead, but...
What is up with these rockets, man?
I feel like I'm missing something here, so I'm afraid to comment.
Vision.
I mean, yeah, it does offer vision,
So,
for sure.
but they didn't have any wards coming up through the river. So maybe Patrik's like, if I chuck it down here, I can cover Tribush, I can cover behind the red buff.
I mean, like, yeah, that definitely makes sense.
And it's not like they're fighting.
No.
You don't need it's a super mega sight rocket.
Right,
now.
exactly. Just a bit of information.
That's what Jinx was doing at the end of Arcane.
Yeah.
She just wanted to see what was happening.
It's all about information. In any case, as you rightly said, nothing, you don't lose anything off the back of it. I was thinking of
It's
that
already
quote,
half of
nothing
its
ventured,
cooldown.
nothing gains, but I was like,
it's not really that, though, is it?
It's not that, is it?
No, all's well that ends well.
All's well that ends well.
It's kind of like, yeah, it's fine, you know?
Yeah, it is fine.
As long as it ends well.
It's also not a long cooldown.
No, it's already
relatively
almost back up.
speaking. Yeah, so I think it's fine. If anything, we can say that he's like...
Min-maxing.
Yeah, you know, always want to get value out of it.
It's like, you know, when you're Caitlyn in lane, and you just ace in the whole, the enemy lane,
Yeah,
just to
exactly.
chunk them. It's like, you should just be a little bit lower health than you are. I'm not going to be able to kill you right now, but, you know, just take one of these.
Yeah. Well, the next Drake spawns in about a minute and a half. You imagine that both teams will look towards it. XL may sit there and say, nope, we're scaling. We don't care. You can have it. And instead, we'll look to trade for something else on the map, very similar to what we saw Rogue do in the previous game. Or they might try and fight, because right now they do have a 2k gold lead. You'll notice that Adam has been able to close the gap that he, or the deficit rather, that he found himself in the early game. Hasn't quite completed his Blade of the Ruined King, but is slowly working towards it. At the very least is level 10. Meanwhile, Finn is going to tick over to level 11. So that level 2 ultimate is going to be available for him, for NUCLEARINT, and for Nukeduck. So those rockets will start to pack a little bit more of a punch.
It definitely will. I wonder how BDS are going to manage around these next few moments, because right now it really feels like they are just slowly getting outscaled. Now, they do have Adam now at 140 CS, building up towards that first items. Cull going to be complete for him soon as well, and maybe to have more of an impact as the game goes on. But at the moment, it's all in Excel's favor. And you do, well, at least I look at this BDS lineup, I'm like, how are you going to kill Ornn? How are you going to kill this guy who is already on his way towards his first item, has Bramble Vest, has Bladed Steel Caps? Yeah, you can ult him with the Syndra, but Unleashed Power isn't going to chunk him out too quickly. He's just going to be a very beefy boy on the front line. And now xMatty in for a very difficult situation as well. Jumps away, limit low. And you can use the other ones for sight, but that one is used for killing. Patrik able to secure the kill with Super Mega Death Rocket and walk out pretty much unscathed. Curtain Call answers back, but Advienne can just block up the shots for Excel. It's the second kill on the board.
Nice dive. Just well executed overall from XL. Good use of the package alongside the engage from Markoon. They have the numbers advantage, but they're not going to risk contesting it right now. Nukeduck has gone back to base. Good sidestep there from Patrik.
Yeah, Adam just a little bit pulling the trigger too early on that flawless duet. Perhaps should have put it behind him and then aimed for where Patrik was instead of trying to predict Patrik's movement. And Patrik does still have flash and the heal. So even if he had been caught between those two pieces of the duet, should have been able to get away. Advienne and Limit will meet in the jungle. Who has lower HP, Vedi? That's the important thing. They get 10% increased damage. Oh, it's current now, so Advienne could get turned around on by Limit. That 10% damage is vital for a support, Vedi.
Yeah, but it's 10% to those with greater current health than you. Right?
Yeah.
It's not just a flat 10%.
So that's why I was trying to work out who had more current health damage.
Exactly.
However, it is good for Adam generally, because if he ever meets Finn in the jungle, for like 3/4 of that fight, Finn's going to have more max HP.
True.
Current HP.
True. Well, while you shared that fun fact of trivia, Markoon was able to secure himself the first Rift, well, the second Rift Herald of the game, I should say. They'll likely use that to break open the mid-tier 1. Sieging against a Syndra can be quite difficult simply due to the fact that she has that risk of a stun, which means that if you get a little too close with your AD carry, she could lose her life. So having this Herald will make it much easier to siege and take that tower down. You can see that many BDS members are reading the play, though. They have the top wave pushed in, bot wave pushed in as well. Adam has roamed up to mid. They might be looking for a fight here. Good use of the E from Markoon to spot out the remaining BDS members. Those wards in the river will also spot Adam out. And XL playing patiently, knowing that this was a This was a window where BDS could have looked to attack, but it was mitigated. And instead, XL will now push out top, push out bot, and with the Herald, they can now look to drop that mid so they can secure the objective. And with Limit going back to base, they know they have the numbers advantage. So, literally, as we were just talking about it, nice setup for XL. This is very much an example of turns as Matty.
Oh, nice Gale Force to get away from the Call of the Forge God. And as you say, XL now taking their turn in the mid lane. Rift Herald will get another charge in. This tower should go down as Patrik can just chunk it out. Curtain Call opens up. Cinkrof going in with the Crescent Sweep. Won't be able to knock him back far enough. Markoon able to EQ combo out of there. NUCLEARINT TPing in, as is Adam. And this could be a good flank position for BDS. Jumped away by XL, but Markoon has to pop the stopwatch. Adam trying to dive onto the backline. Limit's going to pick up the first kill. What can Nukeduck and Patrik do? Not enough. The heals from Limit keeping BDS tanky enough, healthy enough to survive through the burst that is Jinx Corki.
Good use of the teleports from BDS there to find a successful flank onto XL, get themselves 2 kills, and they should be able to get their first tower of the game as well. Really great play there to punish the fact that a lot was unavailable for XL. They wanted to try and reset. They were able to find something back, so great play there from BDS.
Able to keep that gold within about 2,000 as well. Finn did just walk his way down towards the bottom lane and should be able to take this tower with his demolished proc. So XL will be able to answer with another tower of their own, 4-1 in terms of total towers. And actually see XL's bot and top tier ones still stand on the Rift. I'm going to have another look at this play in the mid lane because XL overstep a little bit.
So, what's crucial here is that Cinkrof gets a nice engage, he's soaking up a lot of damage, the Lulu ultimate gets used very early, and Finn doesn't have his ult either. Now XL is in full retreat mode, NUCLEARINT gets a good... Well, he doesn't actually land the stun onto Markoon, but it gives Adam the opportunity to get in. He gets the first Q off of the ultimate, he then gets a good stun onto 2 members, which gets him another kill. And while at first you look like, oh, he's probably going to get burst down, this is where the Soraka heals then come through and provide a lot more assistance. So, just a well-executed fight there from BDS, and perhaps we got to see a glimpse of how this Irelia will work in the team fights. Yes, I mean, you can be quite squishy, especially with the current build path that you have. But when you have that Soraka providing all those additional heals, on top of the fact that Irelia typically just gets a lot of heals as well from the builds that she normally goes for, she could be much harder to kill than I initially anticipated.
I mean, that's also the reason that Advienne decided to go towards this Oblivion Orb to kick things off. Instead of going, you know, support item completion, he got the Oblivion Orb literally as the first part of an item that he finished just to get an extra healing reduction over onto BDS. Against the Soraka, it does make sense. Nukeduck is spotted on a ward here. NUCLEARINT looking for the knockback. And Nukeduck will use the package to get away from that one. Finn not in the position to fight this Vanguard Jet. Stuck goes wide. There's the flawless duet. But look at the CC chain onto Adam. Baited and outsmarted XL. Waited and they found their fight. Cinkrof now forced to use an ultimate of his own just to keep himself alive and retreat back to his own mid lane. XL will work their way down towards this dragon, spawning in 8 seconds time.
So that's a little bit more of what I expected to happen to the Irelia in these fights. Admittedly, Adam did land, well, the E wasn't quite able to land the ultimate onto Patrik, but Patrik then flashes away, and once Adam is committed, there's nothing that he can do. He's now in the fight. There's no way that he's getting out of that, and he finds himself in a 1 versus 4, meaning that he very quickly loses his life and costs his team the Drake. So BDS, they tried to look for another fight. It didn't go quite the way that they wanted. XL get themselves a kill, get themselves a Drake, and find themselves with the gold lead once more.
And it's the difference between the first fight that was basically a flank because Finn wasn't able to frontline, and this fight where Finn didn't frontline for the Irelia, but he distracted the 4 other members of BDS with that Call of the Forge God. XL, very strong front-to-back fighting team here, and because of it, they get their first dragon of the game. They have a 2,000 gold lead, and maybe even they'll look to start to control this top side of the map. I have been informed, Vedi, first Chemtech Rift that we have seen here in the LEC. Cool.
Yeah, this is it.
It's just, I mean, it's smog. Let's be honest, we shouldn't be glorifying it. It's just a smoggy rift.
I mean, it is.
The Industrial Revolution has done bad things to Summoner's Rift.
True.
Get your catalytic converters out. Start making the world a better place. Solar energy, you know, it's the way to go.
The other thing that it does is it removes the brushes.
It does.
Which means that this is something that Caedrel talked a lot about prior, well, when the changes were announced, was how basically what will often happen, especially when you have a lead, is how you'll use the jungle to like control. And sometimes being able to find fights in the jungle are ways in which you can either snowball the game to be able to end it, or be able to actually turn a game around, being able to fight in those narrow choke points. But this Chemtech Rift, removing those bushes, setting up potential traps, and instead creating this like field of invisibility, makes all of that a lot more complicated. And it means that gaining control over the enemy jungle can actually be significantly more effective and make it much harder for the opposition to be able to come back into the game. So we'll see how both these teams leverage it. You can see there was one control ward there, but look, Finn lurking around in the fog of war. xMatty has no idea.
He has got Flash, he has got Barrier, and he has got Cinkrof just around the corner. Call of the Forge God coming out, Flash Brittle. Oh my goodness, it's just unfair. That's a tank! A tank shouldn't be able to do that. xMatty burns both his Barrier and his Flash and Wish and dies in the end. Anyway, but perhaps Patrik's going to be turned back around on Wild Growth, keeping him alive just enough to survive for the moment. But the Vanguard Jet slowed him enough for BDS to find the chase, and now the chase can really continue. Nukeduck has to put the damage down for his team. Markoon only gets a ward. Double goes down for NUCLEARINT. And BDS have been able to close that gold gap once again.
If that's not a summary for AD carry in 2022, I don't know what is. Both AD carries falling short right there. Patrik did not have his flash, which meant that if he walked through that Irelia ultimate, he would have lost his life. So he was literally stuck between a rock and a hard place, or multiple blades should probably be a better description. But also the fact that Finn was able to find that solo kill onto xMatty. Well, I suppose Patrik did help as well. But just goes to show how powerful this Chem Soul can be. Like, he just comes out of Fog of War. xMatty's like, what are you doing here? Gets knocked up. Then he realizes that he wants to do that brittle combo, ult combo, to be able to get that one shot. Is forced to flash to get it. Then the Gale Force plus the auto attack coming out from Patrik. Patrik then very quickly realizes he's not in a great spot. The stun comes through from NUCLEARINT, flash in from Adam to be able to land the follow-up stun. And then he realizes, there's nowhere I can go. And then on Finn, he tries to save his AD carry, ends up costing him his life.
It does take them a long time to work through him, but in the end, it is BDS picking up 2 kills on the play. Markoon wasn't involved in it at all. And Nukeduck not strong enough yet on this Corki to really put the damage down. You can see nothing surprising in that damage dealt last team fight graphic. Nothing surprising at all. How on earth does he do 3,500 damage as Ornn, man? Brittle is slightly overpowered.
Because Ornn does it all. And now he's back in the meta, providing upgrades for all.
Yet to see an upgrade come out from him. He has only just hit level 14, so he's upgraded his own item.
Yep.
The Sunfire Aegis, I believe it's called.
Sunfire, the hotter Aegis.
Yeah, the volcanic Aegis.
I don't
Molten
learn
Aegis?
names.
Yeah, nor do I, but we can just make him up as we go along. As Finn looks for a little bit of damage onto Cinkrof. 30 seconds on the Chem Tech Drake. Would be the second of the game for XL. We'll put BDS on Soul Point if they can secure it. And of course, Chem most people are saying is the most powerful soul of them all.
Really
perhaps
strong.
Slightly overpowered in its relation to the others. Look at the damage these rockets are starting to do. Healing coming out from Limit, but you can't land the Starfall. You can't get the healing for yourself. Mid-wave, a cannon at about a third HP, and a tiny, small caster remains with it, but XL have total vision control.
The funny thing is, Finn is now a rogue. Look, he's in stealth, looking for the flank. Oh, and this is a good flank.
Oh, cut and call coming out. Call of the Forge God has been used. Who's he looking for? NUCLEARINT, the first target. There's the Witch coming out as XL actually forced away, and Finn finds lonesome against 5 members of BDS. But what can Advienne and Patrik do? Patrik has no mana. He can't change to the rockets, and because of that, he's rooted and taken out. BDS able to wipe this fight down in the bottom side river. Nukeduck will have to flash himself. Dragon was secured, though, by XL.
I mean, that flank was very good from Finn, but there was absolutely zero follow-up from the rest of his team. XL was so focused on securing that Drake that they leave themselves completely exposed to the collapse from the rest of BDS. They end up losing their AD carry, they lose their frontliner, and now BDS are beelining it straight towards the Baron as they should. They know they have the numbers advantage, but Finn has TP. This isn't the fastest Baron, and he will be up in 8 seconds' time.
It's a pretty slow Baron, as you say. TP coming out from Nukeduck because he's going to join this one. Clears out the mid-wave, 8,000 HP on it. Advienne stepping forward. Markoon getting in there as well. Has the smite. Of course, levels don't matter, even though Markoon's at a 2-level disadvantage. Smite equal with Cinkrof. Finn on his way. Call of the Forge God not up. More vision in the pit. NUCLEARINT, look at that damage. Limit forced away as well. Markoon, EQ combo, smite secured, but it's Cinkrof that gets it. But look at the damage coming out from XL immediately afterwards. As Nukeduck can stay alive, they can wipe this fight. Limit across the wall trying to do what he can, but what he can do is not too much. xMatty dies and only Cinkrof and Limit survive.
Still, BDS walk away with the Baron, but what a combo there from Finn. I think that was a 4-man knockup, followed up by Markoon. The damage looked good. Patrik wasn't quite at the fight yet. This could have been so much more devastating, but let's go back to that original Drake fight and look at Finn here. Really good flank, but there's no follow-up. Markoon actually gets stunned by Adam, preventing him from joining in. Then the 4-man ultimate from Adam. Didn't realize that initially, but that was so good at preventing XL from even being able to follow up on that engage, even if they wanted to. Then the sun comes down onto Patrik with the follow-up route from xMatty. Means that the damage is enough to secure that extra kill onto Patrik. And then we very quickly transition over towards the Baron. This is where the TP comes through from the rest of XL. And let's have a look at this combo that comes in from XL. Markoon is going to throw out the sight cone. The EQ is going to come in. There it is, there's the pillar, there's the knockup into Rocket, 4-man knockup. It looks good, the damage is good. Cinkrof with his ultimate is able to buy a lot of time, and Limit is able to just get away to safety. Cinkrof does hold his flash until the last possible second. But xMatty, unfortunately for him, does not have one of his own. So the kills currently 7-7, the gold pretty much dead even. The Baron did go into the back pocket of BDS, but they weren't really able to convert it into anything. 2 Drakes for either side. The problem for BDS is that the longer this game goes, the better it is for XL. Their comp only continues to scale. Corki, I feel like we haven't really seen the damage yet of this Corki build. It does take a long time to ramp up, but now that Ludens is completed, this is around level 16 as well, so the maxed out ultimate. This is around the time where we should start to see that Corki damage come through.
Alongside that, Patrik now has his Typhoon Force, the upgraded Gale Force from Finn. You like that name? I made that one up.
Cool. Oh,
Could you, yeah, it could be
I legitimately thought that was the name.
Oh, really?
You should just stick with these.
Hurricane Force? See, I think Hurricane Force, or I was going to go with Tornado Force. And I thought that sounds a bit too much like a Power Rangers ripoff. So with the Tornado Force, dun, 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 dun,
I see,
coming into action. So I thought Typhoon Force was a
That's
nice
cool.
little middle ground.
I mean, personally, I just call it the upgraded Gale Force.
Yeah.
Yeah, which gives more stats, which is great.
That is true.
Yeah.
Typhoon Force.
Okay.
But yes, the Ornn item upgrades is just only going to help XL as this game goes on. It's currently only one of those mythics upgraded. I expect to see a Nukeduck's Ludens turning into
An upgraded Ludens?
upgraded Ludens. Well, it's Ludens Tempest, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right on that one.
Yeah.
Because it's Ludens Echo into Ludens Tempest. Yeah, the Ludens part doesn't
Yeah.
change. You could also look these up.
It's not as fun.
They're just coming up with all
See, the thing
names.
is, at this point in the game, it's often we have 5 minutes between fights.
True.
Right? So we talked about how the XL scales better. We've talked about how BDS can win fights. We got to fill the rest of that time with something better.
I know. Let us just name everything.
Worked for Adam and Eve.
True.
You know, they named all
Very
the
true.
animals.
It's true. There you go.
Yep.
It's the Luden Omega one-shot.
Nice.
Yeah, right?
Okay, so what position are we in here? Because
Well,
XL have
Corki's in
control
a
of the
really
river
bad
first.
position.
As you say,
He
Nukeduck
may
does
have
have
to
the
TP.
unleashed TP, but he's on wards. There's so much ward coverage
Yeah,
for
I
BDS.
mean, he's in such an awkward spot. XL's like, hey, man, we have control over the river. BDS like, hey, we have mids. We also see your mid laner. So
Mid
the
laner does
side
have
lanes
package.
are in a very good position for XL. But let's have a look now. Finn not trying to flank, just playing front to back with his team, which I think actually makes way more sense.
Yep.
But
There's
now
the
the
TP.
TP. Okay, I like this. Let's see where the engage is going to come through. The traps are thrown down. Cinkrof looking for an engage.
Look at that damage on xMatty. Already half of his health are gone. The big one coming out as well. Called the Forge God has been used. Cinkrof tries to get in the midst of them, but with the Crescent Sweep, he cannot survive. And now XL can open up. That's a double bomb if I've ever seen one. Hextech upgrades all round for XL as they just snipe out Limit. NUCLEARINT will recall behind them, and he's spotted. If you recall in the camouflage, you are uncamouflaged. NUCLEARINT spotted out by that ward. Markoon's going to go in with the Cataclysm, locks NUCLEARINT in place. Back he comes, Markoon, with that GA. He built that second item, and now NUCLEARINT Well, he's on another ward. He's back. He manages to flash away. Finn still on the chase. Advienne coming in as well. Perhaps looking for the kill himself. Adam stayed around for a long time. And meanwhile, Nukeduck and Patrik are just pushing in the bot lane. This will be at least the inhibitor tower. Definitely the inhibitor to follow. You have to feel as Patrik forces xMatty away. XL, get the inhib, get the Drake, get out. And for the moment, actually looks like... Wait, is there a TP on NUCLEARINT? There is. He's going to get the recall up. There's a TP. XL outnumbered right now. Adam dashing forward, exhausted. Only lands the Vanguard Jets onto one, and now Finn is going to join the party. Down towards the bottom lane. It's a 4v4 brawl. Stun lands. Advienne survives. Nukeduck does not shut down, and it goes over to limit. Perhaps not the target that you wanted for it. Markoon farming in his jungle right now. Doesn't really want to join his team. Advienne will survive with a heal. And the tower stands and forces BDS away.
Okay, so BDS at the very least get themselves a kill back. With the Baron spawning in 15 seconds, they may very well look to force this objective, knowing that they can create a numbers advantage. Finn does... still not have the TP. I was pretty sure that he TP'd in the last fight, but I couldn't quite remember.
It's sometimes hard to see the other side of the screen with the divider between us.
Well, there was an item in front of his icon,
okay.
so I literally couldn't see. Now, the Baron has started off, as we talked about, the TP going to be used from Adam. That means that Finn will be a little late to the party.
Remember, Nukeduck doesn't have TP either. And, doesn't matter, Markoon doesn't have a life XL, immediately have to back away. Good CC and the damage combo out of NUCLEARINT there to make sure they could get this Baron. And because of that, they will go into a gold lead. Team BDS now 2,000 gold ahead.
Rocket going to come through, unfortunately, for XL. Too little, too late. And yeah, as you rightly said, BDS now find themselves with the gold lead, and a lot of this transpired as a result of the very extended play that happened following the Drake. XL saw, okay, well, NUCLEARINT is forced to, well, stick around on the map because he keeps getting interrupted. That means that his back is going to be delayed. That means that we can, as XL, can siege onto these towers. They do get themselves the inhibitor, but then BDS looking for a pick, knowing that the Baron was going to be spawning soon, allowed them to punish XL and actually convert this into a very big objective. They're now playing through bot to push out this wave. You can see Adam is pushing through mid as well. And that means that they have 2 lanes to play through and they can start the siege themselves. Now, you'll notice as well that Nukeduck, the core of his build has now been completed. This is really where, I mean, we've already started to see a lot of the damage that he's capable of, but this is really where we'll get to see a lot of it. xMatty going to use his ultimate to try and zone XL away from this tower, and they're just going to do what they can to hold the line.
So no TP on Finn, but look at that damage from the Rockets. The thing about it is it's not just the fact you can do that amount of damage, is that you do it in an AoE.
Yep.
So everyone nearby, down to half HP. Limit already, just healing up his teammates, down to half HP himself, and he's only got Redemption and Moonstone to try and give himself that extra heal power. Finn joined the team in the mid lane as he's going to push out that wave. Baron still remains, of course, for a minute 30 on BDS. They're going to try and use this camouflage zone, but that control ward, that's why we're seeing so many control wards in the jungle in this game. That gives you vision on any opponent in that area. However, they can always see it and clear it out. It's a very costly way to make sure that your jungle and the enemy jungle is safe to traverse.
You can see still, though, Markoon wants to drop those sweepers, get a little bit of information down. You can see wards sitting just outside the plume of smog, I guess.
Fog zone.
Fog zone. Waiting to pick up the package. Last possible second. Dragon spawning in 45 seconds. This will likely be the fight that could determine the game.
Feels like it.
Those 2 wards there just outside will give information. BDS sitting in the fog zone.
See, it's a bit too intense of a game for the name I usually use for it, which is what we're not going to do. Markoon, oh, that's a lot of damage onto him. Cinkrof stepping forward as well. Markoon down at 2 xMatty. As the curtains open, the curtains close, perhaps on XL, and Patrik is forced away as well. Advienne will fall, and BDS, out of the darkness, out of the camouflage, out of the smog, they find 3 quick kills. Baron still remains on them for 15 seconds. And it could be the beginning of the end for XL.
And just like that, XL lose 3 members. The TP is going to come through from Nukeduck. He's trying to clear out as many of these waves as possible, but BDS have their eyes set on the mid lane. The bot lane they can't really do much about right now. The question is, can XL stop the end of the game? 14 seconds. It's close, but with 5 members of BDS, it all comes down to what can Nukeduck do.
NUCLEARINT has flash in just a second as well. Adam trying to get onto the back line, trying to get onto Patrik. Cinkrof gets onto Nukeduck. Super Mega Deathwalker isn't going to be enough, and both the Nexus Towers have already fallen. BDS, after being behind for so long, have been able to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat as they take down Excel and claim their first win ever in the LEC.
And just like that, the game ends. We talked so much about the scaling, but this Jarvan in the late game was so squishy, going for the GA second, kept getting one-popped. And a lot of credit needs to go to NUCLEARINT. He was finding a lot of great picks.
Yeah.
The fact that he survived after also recalling in that fog zone was crucial because he could go back to base, TP in, allow BDS to get the Baron, and there are all these little decisions that ultimately led up to BDS being able to turn this around and get themselves a big win over XL because things were looking dicey for them. It didn't look super great for them in terms of the fights, but they were able to turn things around.
It definitely worked. Key player of the game votes at LEC on Twitter, Cinkrof, NUCLEARINT, and xMatty. Probably NUCLEARINT, in my opinion. He, as you say, had some really good performance near the end of that game. And BDS, actually, across the last 2 days, 2 good performances. You know, they lost to Fnatic yesterday, but still had a strong early game. And they beat XL today. Now, Mad Lions and Irelia came out of the gate swinging with a dominant win, but can SK give the back-to-back champions a run for their money in our next game? Okay.